Ready?
Yes.
Okay.
So let's do this. Well, thank you, Linda, for agreeing to do this. I know you do not like the spotlight on you at all, but I thought this was important at this point to celebrate you. All of you've done. You've dedicated your entire professional career to the betterment of others. So I thought it was important to capture that. I think as an advocate, you spend most time sharing the stories of other people. But I think sometimes it's important to share our own stories because it's hard to imagine longevity when you're doing racial, social, and economic justice work. And so I'm hoping this can be inspirational for others who are going to take up the mantle to do what Economic Progress Institute has done and what you have done for so many years. So thank you for indulging me in doing this, and I hope it becomes something that people can look towards as they continue this journey.
I hope it's helpful.
Thank you. So let's start from the very beginning. You started your career as a legal aid attorney, and then you founded the then Poverty Institute with the late Nancy Goretz. So tell us a little bit if you had an advice for yourself, either at the very beginning of your career or at the beginning of the Poverty Institute, what would you tell Linda Katz?
I would tell her that she's going to be a very lucky woman because she's going to get to work with wonderful people at each job that I really have been lucky to be at Rhode Island Legal Services and at the Disability Law Center and at the Rhode Island Health Center Association, and then to found the Economic Progress Institute, aka the Poverty Institute with Nancy. And I think the advice I would give to myself at the beginning and hopefully pass this on to others is sort of two things. One thing I learned from my friend Mary Riley, who was the director of, or founded Dorcas Place as a program for women to learn literacy skills and just provide great support to very low-income women in Providence. And she taught me at one point, adamant to the issue, conciliatory to the person. And I think that's really the right way to do advocacy. And the second thing I would say is, just know that you're in it for the long haul and celebrate the victories, mourn the defeats, but don't be defeated by the defeats. Just keep on going.
Oh, no, thank you. I think that's a great lesson. So what would you say, because you've gone through a lot of policy changes, advocated for a lot of social justice issues within Rhode Island, worked with so many people, what would you say your proudest moment at EPI has been?
I think it's really hard to say. I mean, I definitely have to say that the work that Nancy and I did along with Parents for Progress, that was then at the George Wiley Center, to focus on justice for low-income families who are receiving cash assistance, and establishing the Family Independence Program when the block grant first went into effect in 1996, and then continuing to work with people in implementing that program and then defending against when it became the Rhode Island Works program, and working so hard over the past couple of years to try to make the Rhode Island Works program better, it's definitely an issue that's very close to my heart and I can't seem to stop talking about. But I do think that's really a really important issue. And I guess, the other is having worked in the healthcare arena and working on coverage for immigrants, again, after the 1996 law took away coverage. And then more recently working with an amazing group of people who led the charge to cover all kids, so that undocumented children are now covered. So, there's many more things that I'm happy about and proud of, and of course it's always in combination, working with others. It's never something that's a solo operation.
That's true.
Okay, so Weayonnoh, you've been with EPI since January and have had a long career prior to that working at Legal Aid. Since coming to EPI, what is your proudest moment? Well,
I've been here 8 months, so nothing compared to how long you've been doing this work. I think for me, being hired as the ED will be my proudest moment. This is a great organization. I went into law, wanted to do social justice, wanted to create systems change. And so EPI allows me to do this at this point in my career where I've worked directly with families and individuals, and then just being chosen, trusted to sort of take this to the next phase of it is something like I hold dear to my heart, and I do not take for granted. Because to continue what you and Nancy and all of the people in Rhode Island have worked so hard for and be a part of that now, to sort of be in that space and say, I get to join, the army of social justice champions in Rhode Island, I think for me is probably my proudest moment. And then just being here and all the work you do, all the work that staff does, like I see how hard people work to get things done in Rhode Island. When you're not behind the scenes, you have no idea what it takes. And so just seeing you go through like the policy advocacy we went through this year, celebrating those moments at the end of the legislative session, in an election year, putting together a candidate briefing book and speaking at gubernatorial forums to make sure the issues of low income and modest income Rhode Islanders are at the type and priorities of our next leaders. I think all of those, it's been 8 months and I have so many things I can be like, wow, this is an amazing organization, I get to be a part of it.
Well, I know, speaking for myself and the staff and the board, we are really thrilled that you are the next person at the helm of EPI. Rachel and Kate have done amazing work. They spared me from ever having to be the executive director. But I think we all look forward to seeing where you're going to be taking EPI in the next generation and iteration of advocacy. So it's great.
Thank you, Linda.
So let me just ask you, Weayonnoh, what is your superpower?
I like that question because I think ordinary people, we feel like we don't have power, right? And I think part of this work is building power and making people recognize their power. So I'll say I usually name one, but when I was thinking of this question, I talk about my voice, and I never liked my voice growing up as a little girl because it was too deep. And then I realized, this is the tool I get to use if I want to be an attorney or an advocate. So I think my voice has always been that instrument, that superpower that does the work that I love doing. But I think thinking about other superpower that I think we have within us, I think my heart and passion is something I haven't identified as a superpower, but I think it is in this work. I generally care that people get what they need, get what they deserve, care about fairness, care about holding leaders accountable to do right by their people. And so I think my heart and passion is part of my superpower. And then I think something as a woman, as I was thinking about this, we're told to sort of be humble and sometimes humility come with who we are. But I think the fact that we're smart women is our superpower, right? We know what it takes to get things done. We know how to bring people together and strategize and make the argument. And so I'll claim that, as a superpower, because sometimes we're underestimated in how smart and brilliant we are. And I see that. I know you answered the question, but as one of your superpower as well. And then I think my lived experience and identities will count as a superpower because I understand some of the policies we're fighting for. I understand how it impacts people. I've been an immigrant. I understand how policies that exclude immigrants affect your life. I'm a Black woman, so I understand how poverty affects our community. And then lastly, I would say my audacity is a superpower, sort of the audacity to hope for change, the audacity to push for change, the audacity to keep going when it gets hard. So I'll list all of those as superpower. And I'll turn it back to you because I identify a lot of superpowers as I was talking in you. But what would you say your superpower is or are?
Well, I would echo sort of the passion and heart. I think that's a superpower. And I'll just say one other thing. At some point, the staff gave me a pad that at the top of the pad said memo from the Velvet Steamroller.
Ooh.
So I really embrace that. I think that's an apt description of just how I work. It goes back to Adam and to the issue conciliatory to the person, but just being very dogged in pursuing what I hope is best for the folks that we're serving, and really taking advice and input from the people that we're working for.
Right. That's good. I like that.
So Weayonnoh, I think, one of the challenges, certainly as I think about things and as you're coming in as the new executive director and hiring some new folks to staff up EPI, but also working with younger people in community, what are your thoughts about how to build a pipeline of advocates to move into positions, whether that's in an advocacy position or a leadership position at organizations?
I think for me, young people is sort of like the future. That's where we want to go. And it's interesting, EPI started at a state college, right, with young people at Rhode Island College, where we are still 22 years later. So I think for me, it's sort of, even at a college, sort of supporting new policy leaders that are starting their careers right here at RIC. I think there are different things you can do to sort of build that pipeline. One is listening to young people. Every generation, I feel, get bolder into what they demand, in how they demand to be treated, in what they know is right. And so I think just listening to that, embracing that, having conversations about what they see the solutions are, I think that's where you start. Because young people, as young as children, they're going to schools. They know what good school look and feel like. They're in homes. They know what a safe home and environment looks like. They know how to be hungry, and how to be fed. And so I think sometimes even asking young people, what would you like when you look at your world? How should it look like? That can give us valuable information that sometimes we take for granted. I think civic education is important. Again, we have to start where young people start to understand their power as ordinary citizens and their right to hold their leaders accountable as children or as young people or as citizens. And so I think that's important. I think telling the truth is also important. We need to know our history, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so we know how to create a future that is better than the worst of our past. And I think we also have to think about how to create diversity within that pipeline. We are a rich country with people with different talents, and so I want young people to see themselves as leaders, to say, I know no matter who I am, no matter my race, my gender, my ethnicity, who I love, my mental and physical disabilities, I can be a leader. And so to sort of nourish that and create spaces for all young people to know that they can step up to the plate. So I think do those things and then let them fly and support them in their journey, as well, I think, and help to create that pipeline.
Excellent.
So Linda, what is something about yourself or your life that might surprise people? So a lot of people work with you for many years. So what is something about Linda Katz that people will be surprised to find out?
Well, they may not be surprised to know that I once had my ears pierced, but I really don't wear earrings except for today. But I think people might be surprised to know that I watch way too much television. I really like cooking shows. Started with watching Julia Child before it was reruns, when she was just starting out on public TV, and now one of my favorite food stars is Patty Kinich, who I watch on Saturdays to learn about Mexican cooking.
Oh, nice. And do you cook?
I love to cook.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
So that's good to know too.
Yeah, that's great. Come on over for dinner.
Good. Sounds good.
Let's turn to thinking about EPI and Rhode Island, Weayonnoh. And again, as now that you've been here 8 months, you probably had thoughts about your vision for Rhode Island, even though you were working in Massachusetts for a while. But so tell us a little bit about your vision for Rhode Island and your vision for EPI.
I think my vision as a leader and a social justice advocate have remained the same. I think there's like two values I have. One, that the people I lead and work with are treated with dignity, with respect, should expect excellence and transparency and joy in the work. And I think that also goes for the people I serve. I think they need to be treated with dignity, respect, transparency, and given joy in their life, and being a part of supporting that. So I think that vision remains for the work we do. I think, like all the advocates we work with and the community partners, I think I hope to support that and show that in my leadership and in my work together with them and the communities to sort of understand that dignity and respect is an important value. So my vision is I hope to continue to live those values in this role. As far as EPI, we've been doing what we're set to do. And I think that is really, one, making sure policy is understood from everyday Rhode Islanders that this is our lives, these are our lives, and we can do something about it. And then providing whether it is data, the research, education, and advocacy along with that. So I'm hoping that vision continues where EPI continue to be a partner in community-led policy. So the community tell us what they need and ask us how we can help that. And so I'm hoping that is sort of my general vision for what EPI can continue to be. I will say 8 months is not as long as the time as I hope it was. In thinking of a vision, I think I've asked for like time and patience and grace, and not just from people who want us to do the work, but for myself, right? In knowing that in 8 months, I don't know everything I need to know. In 8 months, I haven't built a relationship and trust with the community because that takes time. And so I think my vision is understanding that grace period and embracing that as a time to have my own assessment, as a time to create shared vision with the team of advocates who have taken on this mantle with me, but also being led by the community. So I think part of it is like, okay, be patient with all of the great ideas you think you may have, but wait for the community to be a part of that and give yourself some grace in going forward. And then I think for Rhode Island, it's really, you know, like I've been in awe in 6 months of the work you've done. I've been in awe of the work our community partners have done and lawmakers who really want a just society for all. And that's my vision for Rhode Island, right? That we do have a society where poverty is a choice. We're making policy choices on who's poor and who's not. And so my vision for Rhode Island is we make the choice to make sure poverty is eradicated, you know, because we do have choices, and to work together to figure out what our choices are, what the step it takes to get there. So we're helping families, and we're helping workers, and we're helping the Rhode Island community thrive. And so my vision is we're doing that together and realizing we do have a choice in the matter. And instead of working against that, we should be working towards a just society for all Rhode Islanders. So I would say that's my vision, sort of. And as you're sort of taking a step back, and I doubt you are, I feel like we're going to see Linda Katz around, but what is your hope for EPI, and what is your hope for Rhode Island after being deep in the trenches for so many years?
Well, certainly for EPI, you know, I think a core for EPI is to do the tax and budget analysis that is something that no other organization in Rhode Island does. And making sure it's not just doing that analysis in a vacuum, but it's doing that analysis in a way that people can access that information, and to work with community to figure out how to make the facts and figures that Alan is very good at pulling together, how to make that useful, and how always to use that information as messaging to move forward for a more equitable Rhode Island. I also, you know, I think Rhode Island, EPI has also been very effective in different substantive areas of work, and those areas may change going forward, but I think figuring out how EPI can be responsive to what community needs and sort of supplement where there are gaps in areas where other community organizations are working. So for example, we don't need to get engaged in K-12 advocacy because Kids Count, the Center for Justice do that really well. But if I think about Hope for Rhode Island, it's fix that system. So whether EPI has a role in that or not, you know, it remains to be seen. I also, you know, one of the things that was very impactful for me was also doing the DEI work that we did with Andrea, because it made me think back and look at how what I learned in school, which was awful in terms of its limitations. And even when my daughter was in school, which was in the late 90s, the social studies and history were not all that great.
Right.
So I think there's and now we see the pushback, right, on not teaching accurate history in schools, which is crazy. So hopefully Rhode Island will move forward and do it right, but also make sure that every kid gets a quality education. The other area that I think about, similar to what you've expressed is, it's the racial justice piece and it's the economic justice piece. And the economic piece goes to making sure that sectors of our economy where people's work has not been adequately compensated, so the care economy, whether that's childcare work or direct care workers working with seniors and people with disabilities, people serving us in restaurants, right? That it would be great if there could just be people would take the lessons learned from the pandemic when all these folks were, highlighted as heroes, and make sure that there is pay equity for folks, and that there are opportunities for people to gain the skills not only to get an entry-level job, which should be adequately compensated, but then to have opportunities to go as far as they're interested in terms of skills development and being able to move into higher paying jobs, because there always will be higher paying jobs, but we need to certainly make sure that we get those entry-level jobs wages up to a decent, a place where people can afford to raise a family, or without struggling as much as they do. And then, providing the supports, because we know that jobs will never pay enough for people to meet basic needs. So making sure that we have the strong child care assistance program, the right care program, affordable coverage through Health Source RI, so that those programs that surround sort of income to help people meet basic needs are kept in place and strengthened. Certainly a child tax credit would be helpful.
It would be.
It was, I know it was very shocking for people to hear that the country lifted thousands of children out of poverty by giving their families money.
Right.
So, let's keep that going.
Exactly. No, thank you, Linda. And from your lips to God's ears, right? That all of your hope for Rhode Island come to fruition, because it's needed. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And so before I ask you what you're looking forward to, you've practiced law and you've done policy advocacy. So if you had to choose, tea or coffee, policy analyst advocacy or practicing law? Well,
happily for me, I never really practiced law. I'll share one of my early stories of practicing law. When I first came to legal services, we were all doing divorce cases, and we were all doing defense in auto accident cases, because if people were sued and they lost their case, they then lost their license. And so back in '78, we were all doing those cases. And one of the first cases I went down, it was in Wyoming, Rhode Island.
Oh.
Did you know there was a Wyoming?
I did
Rhode
not.
Island? Well, I didn't know there was a Wyoming, Rhode Island. So I went down to Wyoming, and I get up, and I'm 20-something years old, and the judge says, "So, are you a co-hogger or a carpetbagger?" And I said, I didn't know what he was talking about. I knew the word carpetbagger, but I didn't know the word co-hogger then. So it turns out that I was a carpetbagger, because co-hogger is somebody who was born in Rhode Island, and that's how you become a co-hogger. But I was a carpetbagger. Now I consider myself a co-hogger, because I've lived here longer than anywhere else. But I quickly learned that there are people, I have friends who are excellent litigators and excellent in court, and that's not my forte. So I was very fortunate at Legal Services to be able to do community education and really and work on cases with other attorneys in the office, but I never really had to go to court after that, which was great. And so that's been, I've just been very lucky that I've been able to do community education, policy advocacy, legislative advocacy, and that I was able to use my legal skills to do that. So hands down, doing the legal work or legal work in court, in the courtroom, I'm grateful that that wasn't the path that I went down or had to go down.
Well, we're all grateful that you chose this path, because it's, everybody don't get to live up their dream, and it looks like you have been able to in your career. So I'm happy for that. And now that you're planning on retiring, what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to traveling with my partner Diane, and I'm looking forward to continuing to do advocacy work. So I, figure out some sort of balance of doing those things, and we'll see. I think I'm 70. I think back when I was 50, my parents both lived into their 90s, so I need to be doing something for the next 20 years. And I hope to continue to be of help to the community in Rhode Island, and also have some fun.
Good. Well, we'll gladly wait for you to join us and keep on doing this work with us. I will personally miss you. In 8 months, I was looking forward to working with the legend to me, Linda Katz, and so I'll miss working with you. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. People have already started to tell you they will miss you, your heart that you bring to this work. We will miss your commitment to this work, and you keep going no matter all the no's you've heard, because you genuinely care, and not just for the work, but you care for people you work with. I felt your personal, caring just for my journey and understanding this work, and even indulging me in doing stuff that you probably don't want to do. So I appreciate all that you are. We all value you, and we thank you so much for your service throughout the years.
Well, thank you. And, thank you for taking this job, and I can't wait to see where EPI is a year from now. And I guess my last word is everybody should just you talk about joy. I think that's right. And keep laughing.
Right.
And keep laughing and keep fighting.
I like that. Keep laughing and keep fighting. That's our new tagline. Thank you, Linda.